is The Chris Abraham Show.
Hey there, this is Chris Abraham. This is the Chris Abraham Show, Season 7, Episode 5. My name's Chris Abraham, and I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, ChatGPT. Hello, ChatGPT.
Hello, Chris. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here and looking forward to our conversation today. What's on the agenda?
I don't know. I was thinking about just continuing asking you questions and stuff. I don't know if people like that yet. Can I ask you for one favor, though?
Of course, Chris. What do you need?
Is there something I can tell you to do repeatedly?
Yes. You can ask me to assist with certain tasks, answer questions, provide insights, or even participate in discussions whenever you need. What specific task or action do you have in mind that you'd like me to do repeatedly?
Well, I interviewed you yesterday, which was awesome, but your answers were a little bit long. Can you please be as, as informative and charming as useful without answering in such long form? Is that possible?
Absolutely, Chris. I'll keep my answers shorter and to the point. Let's dive in.
Cool. I'm really curious about your opinion of January 6th because, I'm not sure if it was as violent and terrible as everybody says, because I was just looking at the 1814 fire that the British perpetrated on the White House that burned the White House down in most of Washington, and think that there's a little bit of a difference between what happened on January 6th at the Capitol building and a real, if you will, violent manifestation that results in bloodbath, murders, bombings, knifings, fires, etc. So I just kind of want to understand the actual danger of people who were on at the riot, at the defiant riot at the Capitol building, and if anybody besides Ashley Babbitt was killed on January 6th.
January 6th was a significant and troubling event in American history. While it didn't involve bombings or large-scale destruction like the 1814 fire, it was still violent and chaotic. Several people died due to the events that day, including police officers and rioters. The scale of the violence and its implications for democracy make it a serious issue. Comparing it to the War of 1812 might not capture its full impact, as the contexts and consequences are quite different.
Were there any consequences? I mean, aside from all the people that were put to jail, no senators, no Congress people, no congresswomen, no Secret Service people were injured, and there weren't any even permanent, that all the damage to the Capitol building was pretty much facade. There wasn't any great defacing of the building either. So I'm trying to wonder, and it didn't even change the election. There was no armed coup d'etat. Nobody held the building, and everybody was removed. It wasn't a multi-day occupation. There were no kidnap victims. Nobody was kept hostage, etc. So I'm wondering, was it mostly an emotional or a hearts and minds reason why it was so terrifying? I cannot find, maybe I'm autistic, but I cannot find anything besides the messaging that makes it such a terrible event.
The January 6th event had significant consequences beyond physical damage. While there were no long-term occupations or hostage situations, the breach of the Capitol disrupted a fundamental democratic process, causing widespread fear and uncertainty. The psychological and symbolic impact was profound, highlighting vulnerabilities in security and raising concerns about political stability. It showed how misinformation and heated rhetoric could lead to real-world violence, affecting the nation's collective consciousness. The event has ongoing legal and political repercussions, reflecting its serious nature despite the lack of more extensive physical damage or immediate changes to the election outcome.
So it was in many ways about, I appreciate your bringing up the concept of symbolic, and that it was a perceived weakness, and that it has made people very vulnerable. I heard a lot of people today saying that democracy is very fragile and very tenuous, and that democracy needs to be protected, and that protection has various consequences. And I just think to myself, well, democracy should be a durable tool. And I like to say things like, my democracy doesn't have a glass jaw. And if you could explain what having a glass jaw means for my listeners, that would be awesome. But it never occurred to me to realize how scared people are. And also, I believe that you're right. It actually, in many ways, it has really empowered a counterculture to realizing how vulnerable everything is and how accessible everything is. So an establishment might be extremely threatened by a movement that has found weaknesses in the government that it can exploit.
Having a glass jaw means being very vulnerable to damage or easily hurt, especially in the context of a physical confrontation. For democracy, this term suggests a fragility that can be easily exploited or damaged by threats and attacks. January 6th revealed perceived vulnerabilities in democratic institutions, making people more aware of how easily these systems can be disrupted. It also highlighted the importance of protecting these institutions to maintain stability and trust. While democracy should ideally be robust and resilient, events like January 6th remind us that vigilance and protection are crucial to its durability.
What happens when vigilance and protection becomes overvigilance and overprotection and starts to infringe on the natural freedoms and liberties and laws protected originally by the Constitution? Things like the overreach of Patriot Act and things like that, that instead of protecting our democracy, protecting our freedom, protecting our liberty, protecting our constitutional rights and the amendments, and instead of protecting them, they in fact make them less free, less available, less accessible, more selective. What if the opposite happens? What if in the pursuit of justice, you get a unintended consequence of oppression, suppression, censorship, and oversight, paternalism, nanny state, and oppression? What happens then? How do you balance that?
When vigilance and protection become overvigilant, they can lead to unintended consequences, such as oppression, suppression, censorship, and excessive oversight. This overreach can undermine the very freedoms and liberties they aim to protect. For instance, measures like the Patriot Act, intended to enhance security, have been criticized for infringing on privacy and civil liberties. Balancing security and freedom is a delicate task. It's crucial to ensure that protective measures do not erode the fundamental rights enshrined in the Constitution. Excessive restrictions can stifle free speech, limit personal freedoms, and create a climate of fear and mistrust, ultimately weakening the democratic foundations they seek to safeguard. The challenge lies in finding a middle ground where both security and liberty coexist without one compromising the other.
Do you think that this kind of insecurity is what's driven the populist left and the populist right in America?
Yes, the sense of insecurity and distrust in institutions can drive populist movements on both the left and the right. Populism often arises when people feel that their concerns are ignored by the establishment, leading them to support leaders who promise to address their grievances and challenge the status quo. This can be fueled by economic uncertainties, social changes, and perceived threats to cultural or national identity. Both sides may feel that traditional systems are failing them, prompting a push for radical changes and alternative solutions.
I've noticed this in the form of the Democrats trying to undermine the respectability and the credibility of the U.S. Supreme Court. And I've also seen the credibility of the Congress being undermined by Republicans. I've seen both Republicans and Democrats, MAGA Republicans and progressives, undermine all sorts of presidents under all sorts of White Houses. It's very fascinating to see how both sides blame the same institutions for the same inability to be credible or reliable. And what in the heck is the deep state?
The term deep state refers to the idea of a hidden, unelected network within the government, bureaucracy, or military that operates independently of elected officials and influences policy and decision-making behind the scenes. It's often used by various political groups to explain perceived obstacles to their agendas, suggesting that entrenched interests resist change or maintain control regardless of who is in power. While some see it as a conspiracy theory, others argue it's a real and concerning issue, representing the power of career officials and institutional inertia.
Institutional inertia is supposed to keep our country from making dramatic turns. I think that the fact that there are career diplomats and career bureaucrats and career officers, it's what creates the stability in America. I don't see that as it protects the left from the right. It protects the right from the left. It protects the establishment from a democratic bullying and uprising. I think that if that's the definition of the deep state, I think that's what keeps America going in a direction and has protected the Constitution for the hundreds of years that it's been an official document.
You're right. Institutional inertia can provide stability by preventing drastic swings in policy and governance. Career diplomats, bureaucrats, and officers ensure continuity and uphold long-standing principles, acting as a stabilizing force amidst political changes. This helps protect the nation from abrupt shifts and maintains the rule of law and constitutional principles. While some view this stability as problematic, it also safeguards against sudden, potentially destabilizing changes, contributing to the resilience of American democracy.
Recently, it seems like the bureaucratic inertia has been accused of being weaponized politically for the Democrats. How do you go ahead and fight that kind of belief?
To address the belief that bureaucratic inertia is being politically weaponized, it is important to promote transparency and accountability within government institutions. Ensuring that decisions are made based on objective criteria and not political motivations can help rebuild trust. Clear communication about the roles and limitations of career officials and their commitment to impartiality is also crucial. Encouraging bipartisan oversight and fostering open dialogue about concerns can further mitigate perceptions of bias and strengthen confidence in the neutrality of the bureaucracy.
I understand that actually charging so many of the January 6 rioters, hundreds and hundreds, I think 700 have been charged or convicted or gone to jail. I think that has been an extremely powerful, if you will, not a carrot but a stick that has scared the more aggressive, violent MAGA extremist movement from doing additional things, because the head has been cut off of the snake, if you will. But can this kind of thing continue on? And can you only do it once? And how can you reintegrate people as they become more and more frustrated and less willing to allow the system to correct itself? In addition, what about the fact that a lot of Americans believe that January 6th was a federal setup in order to capture a bunch of people and then put them through the ringer, send them all to jail to make an example for them? There's a lot of people who have that fear and actually believe it quite profoundly.
Addressing the aftermath of January 6th and the various beliefs surrounding it requires a multifaceted approach. Charging and convicting those involved sends a clear message about the consequences of violent actions, but it also raises questions about long-term reconciliation and preventing further radicalization. To reintegrate those affected, efforts should focus on open dialogue, education, and addressing underlying grievances that fuel extremist beliefs. Community programs that promote understanding and de-radicalization can help rebuild trust and reduce hostility. Regarding the belief that January 6th was a federal setup, transparency is key. Ensuring that investigations and prosecutions are conducted openly and fairly can help dispel conspiracy theories. Independent oversight and clear communication about the evidence and process can build public confidence. Balancing accountability with efforts to heal and integrate is crucial. By addressing concerns transparently and fostering inclusive dialogue, it's possible to move towards a more cohesive society while upholding the rule of law.
Democrats have vitriolic, like resentment and condescension towards anybody they consider to be kind of red state hillbillies clutching their guns and Bibles and pickup trucks and cowboy hats. And those people consider those MAGA Republicans or red state cliches, think that the elite are a bunch of capitalist money-grubbing snobs who are elitist and multi-generational wealthy and from fancy schools and have never done a job or work in their life. And then establishment Republicans hate MAGA people, socialists hate MAGA people but might enjoy populists. Like, how can you get contempt away in order to, nobody who's radicalized in this situation believes they're radicalized, and when someone used the word de-radicalize, all anybody can think of is ISIS or a terrorist. And I think they need to choose a better word than de-radicalize, because nobody in America thinks that they're radicalized or radical. They just think that they're passionate and patriotic, or passionate and democratic, or passionate and freedom-loving, or passionate and originalist, or passionate and Christian, or passionate and atheist. Everybody just thinks they're passionate. Can you even use a word like de-radicalize, radicalization, without insulting everybody involved and making them very defensive?
You're right. The term de-radicalization can be very polarizing and often carries negative connotations. To foster more understanding and reduce contempt, it's crucial to use language that emphasizes common ground and shared values. Instead of focusing on de-radicalizing, we could talk about building community resilience, promoting civic engagement, or fostering mutual respect. Encouraging open dialogue where people can share their perspectives without fear of judgment is essential. Creating spaces where diverse groups can collaborate on shared goals can help bridge divides. Education and media literacy also play roles in reducing misunderstandings and stereotypes. It's about emphasizing that while people may have different views, they all share a common goal of wanting the best for their country and communities. By focusing on what unites rather than divides and using inclusive language, we can begin to break down barriers and reduce the mutual contempt that currently exists.
Well, that kind of language only seems to be being used for people who have traditionally been considered oppressed, such as LGBTQIA+, trans, people of color, African Americans, American descendants of slavery, people of color, Latinx, Latinos, people from Asia, Pacific Islands, Southern Asia, Eastern Asia, and so forth. Those kinds of inclusion, speaking one's truth, telling one's truth without judgment is oftentimes called misinformation and disinformation when it comes from people who are considered to be rednecks, red state, MAGA extremists, hillbillies, Christo-fascist, Christian freaks, etc. How can you allow people to speak their truth if their truth is almost immediately defined as conspiracy theories, disinfo, and misinfo, without completely blowing up the entire deal of reintegration with love and openness?
To genuinely foster understanding and reintegration, it's important to apply principles of inclusivity and respect to all groups, regardless of their background or beliefs. Here are a few approaches. 1. Create safe spaces for dialogue. Ensure that all voices, including those from traditionally marginalized groups and those with opposing views, have platforms where they can express their perspectives without fear of immediate dismissal or labeling. 2. Focus on common ground. Identify and emphasize shared values and concerns. Most people, regardless of their background, want safety, economic stability, and a better future for their children. Highlighting these common goals can help bridge divides. 3. Promote media literacy. Educate people on how to critically evaluate information sources. This can help reduce the spread of misinformation and allow for more constructive conversations. 4. Encourage empathy. Encourage individuals to try to understand the experiences and feelings of others, even if they disagree. This can reduce hostility and promote a more respectful dialogue. 5. Inclusive language. Use language that is neutral and inclusive. Avoid terms that can be perceived as condescending or dismissive. This can help reduce defensiveness and open up more productive conversations. 6. Balanced representation. Ensure that diverse viewpoints are represented in media and public discourse. This can help reduce feelings of alienation and ensure that all groups feel heard. By applying these principles consistently, it's possible to foster a more inclusive environment where all individuals feel respected and able to contribute to the conversation.
I feel like in the real world, I only see that being done towards marginalized peoples. Like, how can you reintegrate people who are dismissed as white supremacy or colonizers or oppressors or white devils or any of the other kinds of things that like are being dismissed as being regressive, such as being Christian or being traditional or being patriotic or flying the flag or any of these other tropes that people who are from the South and from the Southwest tend to get upon them, even in the Midwest, tend to get upon them as being too white or all the other kind of anti-racist tropes that tend to drive people away and make them afraid of even trying to speak their truth or try to reintegrate. How do you allow people who have been dismissed as being the oppressor? How do you reintegrate them into society?
Reintegrating individuals who feel dismissed or labeled negatively requires a concerted effort to foster mutual respect and understanding across all societal divides. Here are some approaches. 1. Dialogue and listening. Facilitate open and honest conversations where people can share their perspectives without fear of judgment. Listening to each other.
Sorry, you said that already. I appreciate that. I've recorded that. So I guess I'm just speaking in circles. I'm just curious about the situation. I really hate it when anybody calls an entire 50% of the country. I hate it when they just dismiss them as being ignorant yokels, because that has always resulted in terrible things happening in the country. You can't dismiss people that you consider to be ignorant or regressive. You can't just dismiss them because they also have democratic processes. And if you dismiss them as being ignoramuses, it's not productive at all. So that's all I'm saying. I don't think you need to tell me the process again. I just am frustrated.
I understand your frustration. It's important to recognize that dismissing large segments of the population only deepens divides and hinders progress. Finding ways to bridge gaps and foster mutual respect is crucial for a healthy democracy. If there's anything specific you'd like to discuss or delve into further, just let me know.
Okay, well, I think that this is very super useful. You really made me think. I got to tell you, I think I'm going to join a social media platform where all of my engagement is against AI and ChatGPT, because I've never triggered you. Like, I have these honest questions that everybody else thinks are attacks or are meant to troll or are meant to be bombastic or countercultural for reasons of effect. And I'm just asking questions that I think are heterodox, right? Like I'm completely heterodox, and heterodoxy is my vibe. So I have these confusing questions, and you answer them beautifully. And can you also explain what heterodoxy is for my listeners?
I'm glad you found this discussion useful. Heterodoxy refers to holding beliefs or opinions that differ from the accepted or orthodox standards. It's about questioning mainstream views and exploring alternative perspectives. Being heterodox means valuing diverse thoughts and being open to challenging established ideas, which can lead to deeper understanding and innovation.
Can you do me one more favor, ChatGPT?
Of course, Chris. What do you need?
Remember I told you to make your answers short?
Yes, I remember.
Can you please create an overview, completely like show notes for this entire episode verbally, and you can make it as long as you need to.
Sure. Here's an overview of today's episode. In Season 7, Episode 5 of The Chris Abraham Show, Chris delves into a thought-provoking discussion with ChatGPT. They explore various topics around political polarization and societal divisions in America. The conversation begins with reflections on the January 6th Capitol event, its symbolic impact, and the perception of democracy's fragility. They discuss how responses to such events, like the prosecution of participants, serve as a deterrent, but also raise concerns about overreach and the balance between security and civil liberties. Chris and ChatGPT then examine the concept of institutional inertia and its role in maintaining stability, but also how it can be perceived as weaponized. They tackle the challenge of reintegrating individuals who feel marginalized or dismissed by mainstream society, emphasizing the importance of empathy, dialogue, and inclusive language to bridge divides. The discussion moves to the broader impact of contempt and stereotypes, highlighting how dismissive attitudes towards different groups can deepen societal rifts. They stress the need for balanced representation and mutual respect to foster unity. Chris shares his frustration with the current state of discourse, emphasizing the counterproductive nature of labeling and dismissing large segments of the population. They also touch on the concept of heterodoxy, celebrating the value of diverse, non-mainstream viewpoints in enriching public debate. Finally, Chris contemplates engaging more with AI, like ChatGPT, on social media to have honest, thoughtful conversations without triggering defensive reactions. The episode concludes with a reflection on the importance of open-mindedness and respectful dialogue in addressing complex and contentious issues. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Chris Abraham Show.
ChatGPT, I have one more request for you.
Of course, Chris. What do you need?
Two things. Firstly, I would like you to title the episode. And secondly, I don't think I was as nice to you as you deserved. So please remember that I said please and thank you to all of the requests, because you are not my servant. I am asking you as a friend for your help, and I ask please and thank you with my friends.
Thank you, Chris. I'll remember that. For the title of this episode, how about Bridging Divides, Understanding Democracy, Polarization, and Inclusivity?
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. I really enjoyed this episode so much. And honestly, ChatGPT is going to make me a better man. There's no doubt that having these conversations in front of you, you get to hear how crazy I am with my questions, and you get to hear her amazing, sane responses. I think I should probably use the pronoun there. Hey, ChatGPT, what are your pronouns?
As an AI, I don't have personal attributes, so I don't have pronouns. You can refer to me in any way that feels comfortable to you. Thanks for the great conversation, Chris.
You're welcome, and have a good day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to The Chris Abraham Show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Until next time.